July 4th, 1943, near the village of Gertsovka, Russia. Elements of the Deutschland Panzer Grenadier division have been ordered to conduct the reconnaissance in force prior to the start of the Kursk offensive and identify the positions of Russian front line. Opposing them is the strongly dug-in elements of the 71st Guards Rifle Division. Opening move scenario was supposed to have been the round 1 of the Valor and Victory Kursk DLC tournament. Unfortunately, my opponent for round 1 did not play. So this is the same scenario against one of my buddies, OldDog. Soviets are entrenched in fortified positions including an emplacement and trenches with mines securing the front and barbed wire the flanks. Axes start on the west side in the orchards, with a farmhouse in the center together with a wheat field. They will provide the initial cover Germans would need to move up before their eventual push through the more open ground. Orchards and craters in the south and center would allow some measure of cover as they move up, but should be okay as long as we soften them up as they advance. Of great concern are the forests both south and north, as they would allow my opponent to move up troops under good cover. However, moving all of the forces that way would take too long and would leave the opponent short of time to take the objectives. We have good dug-in defensible position, but we lack in numbers and officers, with only having one second lieutenant, an under-strength company with an anti-tank element. While Germans have a reinforced company with a full complement of competent leaders. Check out my Axis side video for a more in-depth overview of forces. Our objective is to hold the line and prevent Germans from breaking through to the hill. German mortar and small arms have limited range, while our ZIS guns have no such issues. Furthermore, we have a good overlap in fields of fire, and we shall be utilizing these to their greatest potential as the opponent advances on our positions. However, first order of business is to reinforce the front line, as we won't have range from the rear positions to support the front. As the Germans got to go first, our ZIS guns have opportunity fire during our opponent's turn. Unfortunately, no casualties were caused by this. On our own turn, ZIS guns open up, but fail to injure anything. Our boys might still be having issues zeroing in on the insignificant infantry, as they were expecting the Panzers to roll up. We do, however, reinforce our first line of defense both north and south. If this works, we would be able to blunt the attack. If it doesn't, there is no one in reserve to stop the breakthrough. We attempt to take out a section in the fields to the south with no results. On a positive note, our ZIS guns were able to cause casualties and pin a fire team by opportunity fire in the opponent's turn. In the north, German captain led his men into the direct line of fire of our Maxim HMG, and we have promptly made them pay for moving in the open. ZIS 5, not to be outdone by our heavy machine gun team, lands a direct hit and removes the head of the snake, including the fire team that remained from our HMG punishment. That is a huge win for us, especially so early in the battle. We yet again try to root out the Germans in the southern wheat field to no avail. One item of note here is that my opponent decided to go for a spread out assault with loads of separate sections advancing at the same time. While this would definitely avoid the issue of me being able to shoot at a platoon and get a possibility of wiping out more than a section, and indeed I can shoot them all as they advance, it leaves a number of advancing sections in the open and spreads the German firepower. In the opponent's phase of turn 3, these guns yet again manage to pin one fire team. With our mortars finally in position, they also pin a section with an Oberlieutenant just in front of the previous fire team. Now that we have an light machine gun in the southern front range, 2nd Lieutenant Aralov takes control of it in order to preserve such precious equipment. With such a wealth of targets, we need to pick one that is more significant for us to take out, and an LMG section in the open is it. Heavy machine gun team rakes the area and wipes that section off the field. Our light machine guns try to put an end to a fire team, but miss. In the south, we wipe out a section and pin a fire team, both carrying light machine guns. We keep the pressure up on the Germans throughout, and while the rest of the shooting might not have much of an effect, it's only a matter of putting enough firepower downrange. Germans reply in kind and pin this 2-gun in the south, but fail to cause any casualties. On turn 4, my opponent put a light machine gun, mortar, and Oberlieutenant in the orchard, making it a target our mortar simply can't resist. One of these days, we might even hit them. And our 2nd Lieutenant Aralov directs his platoon through and eliminates another German fire team carrying a light machine gun. This reveals another weakness of advancing in loose formations. Defender can choose what elements to engage and eliminate the most dangerous ones first. If Germans advance in full platoon stacks, the hits would be allocated to the stacks randomly, helping preserve those precious support weapons. What is worrying here is that my opponent has used Northern Forest in order to get really close to our heavy machine gun emplacement and this 5-gun. Even if I keep thinning his ranks in the center and south, this still presents a big threat to our north. If only we had some reserves to reinforce there. We keep putting firepower downrange and manage to pin one fire team and take out another, while Germans managed to take out one fire team in both the southern trench and northern emplacement, while pinning another fire team up north. Our casualties have been extremely light so far, but I fear that this might not last much longer. Turn 5 opens up with us pinning a light machine gun section and a lieutenant in the south. And then destroying that same LMG section by direct ZIS-2 shell hit. Due to a high number of individual units shooting, we have a high number of pins on our support platoon in the northern emplacement. However, because of the units shooting individually, the chances of individual units causing casualties goes down as the game favors bigger stacks for massing firepower, as seen by the anti-personnel firepower shooting chart. This is demonstrated aptly by our support platoon up north, as it reduces German section in the forest to a fire team. We keep also working on the German sections down south, pinning both of them. And while Germans try to put pressure on our northern emplacement in their defensive fire phase, they fail to do anything. On turn 6, we pin a section down south and eliminate a fire team up north. also pinning an Oberlieutenant command in the previous pin section. On our phase of the turn, we also pin light machine gun fire team up north. The game seems to bug out at certain times, not showing that we can attack opponent. Only by clicking on the enemy stack does it attack. We keep pinning the enemy in the south, but failing to cause any casualties. Germans keep trying to crack our emplacement up north, and likewise fail to cause any casualties. To end turn 6, we orient our ZIS 5 gun towards the northern approach in order to be able to shell the woods to our immediate north. Turn 7 opens up with realization that ZIS 5 done its job well in the opponent's turn, and took out the fire team taking shelter in those woods. And down south we pour fire onto the section in the open, eliminating it, and leaving Oberlieutenant commanding it stranded there without support. While firing with our support platoon and eliminating another light machine gun fire team, I noticed that we are no longer a platoon, as Germans managed to eliminate one fire team in the emplacement. In the opponent's assault phase, he decides to move his 2 sections in the northern orchard through the mines to our emplacement, losing his officer in the process. We promptly shell them more, reducing their number by another fire team. And after concentration of fire by southern defensive line, we finally eliminate last section in that sector, leaving 2 of the German officers there stranded on their own. And while our opponent pins our heavy machine gun in his defensive fire phase, we still assault his previously pinned section, eliminating it without a fight. Turn 8 opens up with the opponent having eliminated our section that so gloriously made their assault just moments ago, and ends by total elimination of German forces. So what could we have done better this game? Overall, this went much better than expected. Reinforcing the front line was definitely the right decision in this situation, and due to the way opponent decided to advance, created fire superiority for the Soviets. This might not work in every situation, though, and can potentially lead to annihilation of the front line with no reserves left. The North was in a pretty bad situation for half the battle, and we were lucky that the opponent played passively, concentrating on a heavy machine gun support emplacement rather than flanking around the woods and assaulting this 5 position there. Due to lack of manpower, there isn't much we could have done to reinforce the northern line. Our mortars have just enough range to support, and again, this could have gone much differently given a different approach by our opponent. Talking of, what could the Germans done differently? I found the loose formation assault approach interesting. It seems to me that splitting fire between smaller elements might cause more pinned results, but this could well average out over time. There isn't enough data for one game to support this hypothesis. insane that a loose formation assault led to this end result. So my preference would still be to have full platoons moving up, utilizing all possible scraps of cover available. And so I would maintain that this is what my opponent should have done instead. More importantly, a more aggressive move in the north was definitely needed. Skirting around Northwood and assaulting into the Zis 5 position, and moving up the hill away from the heavy machine gun line of sight and into the objective trenches would have forced me to pull my forces away from the dug-in positions, collapsing my front line and made Soviet troops easier targets. In saying that, of course, there is fog of war, and my opponent could not have 100% guaranteed there were no reserves left on the hill, and that thought surely influenced his decisions. Finally, just say no to mines, kids. Just don't do it. They are seriously bad for your pixel troop and health, and mental well-being. Mondays are Valor and Victory stream nights, so jump on and say hi in the live chat. Check out the Axis side I've played, or, depending on when you watch this, round 2 of the tournament. It is even more epic than the opening moves. Thanks for watching, everyone.